Tony's, thank you both for joining me. I guess if I could just ask you first, Tony Robinson, you know, right now they're talking about paying college athletes.
We're
The
doing
NCAA's, you know, they're a nonprofit organization, but they also make $11 billion.
Hey.
So, I mean, do you think the college athletes who help make that money should get a cut?
Well, I think they should. You got guys that come a long way from home to come to college, and if it weren't for those guys, a lot of these schools will be making that money. So I think they should get their little cut, man. Get a little something to help them out.
Yeah, Adrian Peterson was just talking the other day saying Mansell made a ton of money for Texas A&M. He made a ton of money for Ohio. So, and then with the UConn player, Shabazz just said he goes to bed hungry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, some of these guys can't even afford to eat.
That's right. I'll tell you what, if Gus, good time Deli here, but for Gus, man, a lot of us would have went hungry too, man. Definitely, man. I'm telling you, he's right.
And now Northwestern too, they're talking about unionizing. One thing they're advocating for is just good health benefits because, there's great doctors on the teams, but you get injured and it lasts you long past your time.
Well, your injury's gonna last the rest of your life, So when guys get injured in college or whatever, man, you're gonna need something later on because you might not be able to play anymore football, basketball, baseball, whatever. So there's to be something that's to be done. There's something.
Now, one question too. A lot of these guys, the university's trying to prepare them as much as possible for life outside of college and outside of sport, but sometimes that transition's tough. How do you think the schools can do a good enough job to prepare athletes for real world outside of UT, outside of whatever college?
Well, you got to remember you can't play sports all your life, so there's something you got to be able to do something else. So I think with the education and and guys learning other things besides playing sports, will help them out in life.
Great, thank you. And Tony, now I'll ask you a couple quick questions. What are your thoughts on the all the recent stirrings about paying college athletes? What are your initial thoughts on that? Is it a good idea? I mean, there's no quick, easy answer. What do you think?
Well, I believe this was inevitable. I believe going back to Tony's time when they played, coaches made a living wage. Now coaches are millionaires. They're multimillionaires. If you were to look at when Tony was on the college campus playing, a head coach in college football maybe made $100,000, maybe. Now you're talking about $5, $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 million eventually. Sooner or later, the levee's going to break. Everybody's getting rich in the process, but the kids.
Now, how do you decide what athletes to pay? Because I mean, obviously, the sports that bring in money are college basketball and college football. And when, like, at UT, those programs make enough money that they help pay for the other programs. Now, if there's like a starving soccer player or, someone else struggling, how do you decide who to pay and who not to?
Well, I think what I would do, and I had just interviewed an author of a book who's a retired professor from Towson State, and he has an idea that he calls partitioning. And I think what you're going to see is the top 30 programs in the country are going to break away. The football programs specifically are going to break away, form their own league, be similar to the NFL. And what you're going to see is they're the ones that can afford it. They're going to pay the players. They're going to exist as part of the university system. And every other sport is going to be what they should have been the entire time, which is to say they're going to go into a non-revenue end, except for basketball. And then the top schools in basketball will be partitioned as well. And then we can get sports being back to what they were supposed to be about, because now what it's become about, it's all about money. And these coaches move in the off season, and the kids aren't allowed to move. As Tony said, the kids have nothing. And at the end of the day, the sad thing is, critics say, well, kids get a free education. The reality is that many of the kids that walk onto a college campus can't access that education.
And
they're not capable of doing it.
Plenty of athletes aren't receiving the full scholarship either.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah, definitely true.
Do you see any, I mean, this is going to be something that's going to be talked about for a while, and there's going to be no immediate resolution. What do you think the first bit of action we're going to see is that tries to resolve this issue, that tries to actually make some sort of progression?
Well, I think the courts are going to settle a lot of it, because I think what's going to happen is with the Northwestern case, you already saw the NLRB ruling. The next shoe to drop is going to be that the NCAA is going to take it to a higher court and see if it stands. Of course, I think the Northwestern players, whether they decide to unionize or not, the cat's already out of the bag. And as we've seen in sports, once you see the cat get out of the bag and then you kick the can further down the road, I think eventually what you're going to see, unless those that are over college sports decide to be proactive, which they've never been, I think what you're going to see is one day you're going to turn your television on, Ohio State, Michigan, Tennessee, Alabama, and the players aren't going to come out of the tunnel. And if the players don't come out of the tunnel, I ask you, Tony, what are they going to do if the players don't come out of the tunnel?
It's going to be no game.
Won't be no game. It's going to be that simple.
It's gonna be that simple,
And I think you could see that if the NCAA is not careful. I think in the not so distant future, I think you could see that.
I mean, with the SECs having their own network coming out
Right.
soon enough, I mean, is it reasonable to think the SEC has enough legs to be their own league, above and between the NFL?
Absolutely, because I think what you see now is Texas has enough money to have their own network. The SEC has their own network. The Big Ten has their own network. The folks out in the pack, whatever they call themselves now, have their own network. And so inevitably, that's what we're getting to, and that's part of the partitioning system that I think eventually you'll see, super conferences. And then you let the rest of the college athletes who want to cry about it, they get to come to school, and the ones that are in need will get need-based scholarships, and they get to go play a sport. And it's not a bad life. But football players, see, Tony, football players will have injuries that will carry them, as you said, through life.
Yeah.
Football is a different animal from that standpoint.
Oh, yeah, it's a big difference. A lot of contact going on, man. You're getting hit from all different angles, and you know what I'm saying. One lick could just end your career right there. So now what you gonna do? You know what I'm saying? You got to do something else. It's your education, and then, like you say, education is not really helping a lot of guys.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So you got to learn something. You got to do something else in order to survive.
And it's rough. And so,
It's rough, yeah.
and so the truth is, let's put together a model that'll work for the kids. What I would do is this: if you made me czar, you come to school for a year. I'm putting $50,000 in your trust, the cost of a college education. You come, you play football. We'll teach you a few things. We'll teach you some life skills, but you're there to play football. Now, in order to stay eligible, you have got to meet requirements. Some of the requirements are, we're going to teach you life skills. You've got to go to class. You've got to stay out of trouble, so you can't be a nuisance on the college campus. Second year, I put $50,000 in your trust. At the end of your 4-year career, you will have $200,000, which is the same they're doing right now for the scholarship athletes on most campuses. By the time I house you, feed you, those sorts of things, and then you have that money and you can start your life. And that's what they ought to do, a real-world solution. Quit pretending that we're educating student athletes, because they're not. They're keeping guys eligible. Very few guys have the ability and the aptitude to be educated.
Right. I mean, because there's NCAA rules that say you have to meet academic requirements. There's
And it's a
also
joke.
one big rule that says you can find reason, though, to bring them in anyways.
Exactly. Or guys are majoring in eligibility. The sad part of the coin, though, is that coaches feel the pressure to win. So if Tony Robinson comes to my campus and he's not a good enough player, you know what they do? They run Tony off.
Yeah.
That's what happens. In this system, that doesn't happen. In this system, you sign me for 4 years, and if I meet the requirements, I stay with you. You only get a certain number of players that you can have under scholarship, just like you do now, and we partition it off.